The human species spread through the cosmos in a trail of blood, rising from a backwater planet to become the scourge of a dozen star systems in a single generation. Bruce Robertson, grizzled space explorer who had been in more firefights than most humans had years, found himself in another one as Krulgun raiders attacked his ship in the Xyloth system. Bruce's trusty freighter fought hard, blasting apart the smaller pirate vessels, but one of the raiders got a lucky shot on his engines. Trailing acrid smoke and leaking atmosphere, Bruce managed to limp his damaged ship toward the surface of planet Xyloth, home of the ancient Unas civilization. The Unas city's alien architecture rushed up to meet him as Bruce wrestled with the controls. At the last second, he fired the emergency landing thrusters to slow his descent. The ship hit the ground hard, skidding through a crowded Unas marketplace in a shower of sparks and shattered stone before finally slamming to a halt, half embedded in an alien temple. Alarms blared and warning lights flashed as Bruce took stock of the damage. Life support was stable for now, but the ship was going nowhere under its own power anytime soon. Just then, a loud banging rang out from the main hatch. Peering at the external cameras, Bruce saw a horde of Serpentine Unas first responders, swarming around his ship, spraying fire suppression foam and trying to cut through the hull with plasma torches. The hatch locks disengaged with a hiss, and a tall, imposing Unas strode into the ship. His scales were grey with age, and elaborate tattoos covered his face, marking him as someone of importance. Cold reptilian eyes flicked over the damaged interior before fixing on Bruce. "Human, you have violated our airspace and damaged our city," the Unas stated, his voice a menacing hiss. "I am High Counselor Niran. By ancient Unas law, your life is now forfeit." Bruce clambered out of his acceleration chair, ignoring the stabbing pain from his broken ribs. He drew himself up to his full height, meeting Niran's glare. "I am Bruce Robertson of the Earth Confederation. I was attacked by Krulgun raiders in your star system, ran out of options and had to make an emergency landing." Surprise flashed in Niran's eyes for an instant, before being replaced by contempt. That a lone human would dare traverse Unas space was unheard of. Their kind was still newcomers on the galactic scene, while the Unas were an ancient and powerful civilization that guarded its territory jealously. "Your reasons are irrelevant, human," Niran spat. "You will face Unas justice for your transgressions." He barked an order, and a dozen guards rushed in, weapons trained on Bruce. Bruce slowly raised his hands but used the motion to tap a small button on his suit's wrist computer. Far overhead, the homing beacon began transmitting a priority distress call to Earth Fleet Command. One of their own had been taken, and the humans would tear apart the stars themselves to get him back. As the guards led him away in shackles, Bruce's eyes met Niran's in a silent challenge. The Unas thought they could judge him by their laws, but the grizzled explorer would show them what human resolve truly meant. He would survive on this alien world, as long as it took for his people to find him. And if the Unas wanted a fight, then Bruce would give them a war. The shackles bit into Bruce's wrists as the guards dragged him before the Unas High Council. The chamber was a cavernous space, with towering stone columns and intricate carvings depicting the long history of the Unas civilization. At the far end, seated on a raised dais, were the council members themselves, their reptilian features cast in sharp relief by the glowing orbs that floated around the room. High Counselor Niran stood, his black robes shimmering in the otherworldly light. "Bruce Robertson of Earth," he hissed, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. "You stand accused of violating Unas sovereignty, of causing wanton destruction in our sacred city. How do you plead?" Bruce squared his shoulders, ignoring the pain from his injuries. "I plead circumstance, High Counselor. I was attacked by Krulgun raiders and had no choice but to make an emergency landing. I meant no disrespect to your people." Niran's eyes narrowed. "Your intentions are irrelevant. Your actions have spoken louder than any words could." Niran hissed in annoyance. "The law is clear, Zorak. Transgressions against the Unas must be punished." "And so they shall," Zorak agreed. "But let us give this human a chance to prove his honor. Let him face the trial of the Seracs. A murmur ran through the council. The trial of the Seracs was a sacred Una's tradition, a test of courage and drive. Niran looked like he wanted to object, but the other council members were nodding in agreement. "Very well," Niran spat. "Human, you will journey to the moon of Seracs. There, in the caverns of Zilthan, you must retrieve a Seraxian crystal. If you succeed, your transgression will be forgiven. If you fail," he paused, his eyes glinting with malice, "you will face execution." Bruce felt a chill run down his spine, but he met Niran's gaze unflinchingly. "I accept the trial." "Kylan!" Niran barked. A young Una's warrior stepped forward, bowing his head. "You will accompany the human. Ensure he does not try to escape. Prepare for the journey. You leave at dawn." As the guards led Bruce away, he caught Kylan's eye. The young warrior looked at him with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. Bruce knew he would have to find a way to bridge the gap between them if he hoped to survive this trial. Far across the stars, in the gleaming halls of Earth Fleet Command, Admiral Jameson smacked his palm on the table. "Damn it! We can't just leave him there!" The holographic faces of Earth's leaders looked back at him impassively. "Admiral, we cannot risk a war with the Unas," the President said. Bruce knew the risks when he took this mission. "With all due respect, Madam President," Jameson grit out, "Bruce is one of our own. We don't leave our people behind." "Your orders are clear, Admiral. Stand down." The hologram winked out, leaving Jameson in darkness. But the old soldier wasn't ready to give up. He activated his personal comm. "Malik Forge Zara," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Assemble the team. We're going to get our boy back. Orders be damned." The small Una's spacecraft touched down on the craggy surface of Seracs, its ancient engines whining as they powered down. Bruce Robertson stepped out, his boots crunching on the rocky ground. Kylan followed, his reptilian eyes scanning the desolate landscape. "The crystal caves are just beyond that ridge," Kylan hissed, pointing a clawed finger at a jagged formation in the distance. Bruce nodded, checking the seal on his environment suit. "Let's move. The sooner we get that crystal, the sooner I can clear my name." They had barely taken a dozen steps when the air erupted with plasma fire. Bruce dove behind a boulder, dragging Kylan down with him as energy bolts scorched the ground where they'd stood. "Kralgun raiders," Kylan snarled, drawing his energy pistol. Bruce peered around the rock, spotting the hulking forms of Krulgon warriors advancing on their position. "Looks like they followed us from the ambush. Got any grenades?" Kylan shook his head. "We're not equipped for battle. This was supposed to be a simple trial." Bruce grunted, his mind racing. He grabbed a handful of loose stones, activating the microgravity generator on his belt. "Then we improvise. Cover me!" As Kylan laid down suppressing fire, Bruce leapt from cover, hurling the stones with superhuman force. The low gravity amplified their velocity, and they struck the Krulgons with devastating impact, shattering armor and sending warriors flying. Kylan stared in disbelief. "What manner of trickery is this?" "Not trickery," Bruce grinned, grabbing more rocks. "Just good old human ingenuity." They fought their way across the lunar landscape, Bruce's unorthodox tactics keeping the Krulgons off balance. He fashioned a crude sling from his belt, using it to lob pieces of wreckage from their landing site with bone-crushing force. Kylan watched the human with growing respect, grudgingly admiring his resourcefulness. As they neared the crystal caves, a stray blast caught Kylan in the chest, sending him sprawling. Without hesitation, Bruce threw himself over the fallen Unas, shielding him from a barrage of fire. Kylan felt the impacts hammering Bruce's body, heard the human's grunt of pain. "Why?" Kylan gasped. "Why risk yourself for me?" Bruce met his eyes, grimacing through the pain. "Because it's the right thing to do." As the smoke cleared, they found themselves cornered by the Krulgon leader and his elite guard. The massive alien sneered, leveling a crackling energy axe at Bruce. "Your tricks end here, human," the Krulgon growled. "Prepare to die." Bruce stood, battered but unbowed. "I challenge you to single combat," he declared. by the ancient laws of Krulgan honor. The leader's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed with cruel amusement. Very well, human. I accept. Your death will be glorious. They faced off in a cleared area, circling each other warily. The Krulgon struck first, his axe humming as it sliced through the air. Bruce ducked under the blow, driving his fist into the alien's midsection. The fight was brutal and desperate. Bruce's strength and speed kept him in the game, but the Krulgon's superior size and reach took their toll. Blood streamed from a dozen wounds as Bruce weathered blow after punishing blow. Kylan watched, transfixed, as the human refused to yield. There was a fire in Bruce's eyes, a raw determination that defied all logic. With a roar of defiance, Bruce caught the Krulgon's axe arm, using the alien's momentum to slam him into the ground. Before the leader could rise, Bruce's boot came down on his throat. Yield, Bruce growled. The Krulgon leader's eyes bulged, but he managed to choke out his surrender. The remaining raiders fled, leaving Bruce and Keelan alone in the aftermath of battle. Kylan approached cautiously, reassessing everything he thought he knew about humans. That was impressive, he admitted grudgingly. Bruce nodded, wincing as he prodded his injuries. Thanks. Now let's find that crystal and... He broke off, staring at the cave entrance. It had collapsed during the fight, sealing off their goal. No, Kylan hissed. The trial. We've failed before we've begun. Bruce shook his head, a familiar glint of commitment in his eyes. Not yet, we haven't. There's got to be another way in. We'll find it together. As they began searching for an alternate route, Bruce's suit computer beeped a warning. Their oxygen levels were dropping faster than expected, damaged in the fight. Kylan looked at the human, seeing not an enemy but a potential ally. We must hurry. Our lives depend on it. Bruce nodded grimly. Story of my life, pal. Let's get to work. Meanwhile, light years away, Admiral Jameson paced his office, fuming. What do you mean Ryan's been arrested? Malik, his second-in-command, winced. Bar fight, sir. Local authorities have him in lockup. Jameson swore colourfully. We need him for this mission. Without our best pilot, we're dead in the water. Their tech specialist spoke up. I might have an idea, Admiral, but it's not exactly legal, nah? Jameson's eyes narrowed. At this point, I don't give a damn about legal. Bruce is counting on us. Whatever it takes, we're getting our team together and launching this rescue mission. Let's hear it. As Zara outlined her plan, Jameson felt a mix of pride and trepidation. They were about to cross a line from which there was no return. But with Bruce's life on the line, he knew they had no choice. All right, people, he said grimly. Let's go get our boy back. Bruce and Kylan stood at the base of the ridge, scanning for another way into the crystal caves. Kylan's forked tongue flicked out, tasting the air. There, he hissed, pointing to a narrow crevice. I smell stale air, an old tunnel, perhaps. They squeezed through the gap, Bruce's bulky suit scraping against jagged rock. The passage opened into a low cavern, forcing them to crouch as they moved forward. Their lights cast eerie shadows on the walls. Look, Bruce said, running his hand over strange markings etched into the stone. What are these? Kylan's eyes widened. Ancient Una script. It speaks of the crystal's power. He traced the symbols reverently. Our legends say it holds the wisdom of our ancestors, the very essence of what it means to be Unas. They pressed on, the tunnel twisting deeper into the moon's crust. Bruce's boots crunched on loose gravel. Suddenly the floor gave way beneath him. He plummeted, arms flailing. Bruce, Kylan shouted, diving forward. Bruce's hand found purchase on a jutting rock, halting his fall. Below him, wicked spikes glinted in the darkness. Kylan stretched out, scales straining as he reached for Bruce. Give me your hand, the Unas called. Bruce swung his free arm up, fingers locking with Kylan's. With a grunt of effort, the Unas hauled him to safety. They lay panting on the tunnel floor. Kylan nodded, a newfound respect in his eyes. They encountered more traps as they delved deeper, pressure plates triggering dart launchers, unstable floors, and a chamber rapidly filling with noxious gas. Each time, Bruce's quick thinking saw them through. He jury-rigged his suit's systems to detect hidden mechanisms, used debris to trigger traps safely, and repurposed his air scrubbers to filter the poison. Kylan watched in amazement as the human tackled each obstacle. "You are not what I expected," he admitted. Bruce grinned. "Humans are full of surprises." Finally, they reached a massive chamber. At its center stood an imposing figure, a towering golem of stone and metal, its eyes glowing with ancient power. The golem's head swiveled towards them. With a deafening roar, it charged. Bruce and Kylan dove in opposite directions as the sentinel's fist smashed the ground where they'd stood. They fired their weapons, energy bolts glancing harmlessly off its armored hide. Bruce rolled under another blow, mind racing. He noticed a flickering light in the golem's chest, visible for a split second as it attacked. "The power core," he muttered. "Kylan, I need a distraction." The Unas nodded, darting in front of the sentinel. He taunted it in his native tongue, drawing its attention. Bruce sprinted behind the golem, assembling a crude explosive from components in his suit. As the sentinel raised its arms for a crushing blow against Kylan, Bruce leapt onto its back. He jammed the device into the flickering core and jumped clear. The explosion rocked the chamber. The sentinel staggered, energy crackling across its form. With a final echoing groan, it toppled. Silence fell. Bruce and Kylan approached the altar where the crystal pulsed with ethereal light. Bruce reached out, then hesitated, looking at his companion. Kylan's eyes darted between Bruce and the crystal, conflict clear on his reptilian features. Finally, he stepped back. "You have proven yourself worthy," he said softly. "Take it." Bruce grasped the crystal, feeling its latent power. As they began the long journey back, Human and Unas talked of what they'd learned, of the possibilities this adventure had opened. Meanwhile, light years away, Admiral Jameson stood surrounded by heavily armed strangers. Their leader, a woman with steely eyes, regarded him coolly. "I'm Arya," she said. "We're the Orion Initiative. We've been watching you, Admiral. We can help you save Bruce, but we want something in return." Jameson's eyes narrowed. "What do you want?" "The crystal Bruce is seeking. Bring it to us when he returns." Jameson hesitated, weighing his options. With a heavy heart, he nodded. "Deal." Arya smiled, a predatory gleam in her eye. "Excellent, let's get to work, shall we?" The Unas spacecraft touched down on the outskirts of the capital city, its engines powering down with a low whine. Bruce stepped out, the sacred crystal clutched tightly in his hand. A crowd of Unas had gathered, their scaled faces a mix of curiosity and wariness. Kylan emerged behind Bruce, his eyes scanning the assembled throng. "They're uncertain," he hissed softly, "but many are impressed by your deeds." Bruce nodded, straightening his shoulders as they walked towards the High Council chambers. Una's warriors flanked them, their energy weapons held at the ready. The streets were lined with onlookers, some bowing their heads in respect, others watching with narrowed eyes. As they entered the grand hall, Bruce felt the weight of countless gazes upon him. The High Council sat on elevated seats, their ancient faces etched with lines of wisdom and suspicion. Niran, the skeptical counselor, leaned forward, his reptilian eyes fixed on the crystal in Bruce's hand. "Step forward, human," Zorak, the elder who had advocated for Bruce's trial, intoned. "Present the fruits of your labor." Bruce approached, holding out the crystal. Its soft glow illuminated the chamber, casting dancing shadows on the walls. "Honored Council," he began, his voice steady, "I stand before you, having completed the trial of Serax. This crystal was hard-won, through dangers that tested both Kylan and myself to our limits." He recounted their harrowing journey, the ambush by Krulgon raiders, the treacherous cave system, and their final confrontation with the ancient Guardian. As he spoke, Bruce noticed a shift in the Council's demeanor. Even Niran leaned back, a flicker of grudging respect in his eyes. Zorak nodded solemnly. "You have indeed proven yourself worthy, Bruce Robertson. We thank you for your bravery and—" A thunderous boom shook the chamber, cutting off Zorak's words. Alarms blared throughout the city. An Una's warrior burst through the doors, his scales pale with fear. Chaos erupted in the chamber. Niran sprang to his feet, pointing an accusing claw at Bruce. "This is your doing, human," he snarled. "You've led an invasion force to our very doorstep." Bruce's eyes widened in shock. "What? No, I have no idea who's attacking, I swear." Kylan stepped forward, placing himself between Bruce and the enraged counselor. "I vouch for this human's character," he declared, his voice ringing out over the commotion. "I've fought beside him, seen his courage and honor firsthand. Whatever force threatens us, Bruce Robertson is not its ally." Niran's eyes darted between Kylan and Bruce, conflict evident on his face. Another explosion rocked the city, closer this time. Zorak raised his hands, calling for order. "We have no time for accusations," the elder stated firmly. "If we are to survive this day, we must act now." He turned to Bruce. "Human, you've proven your worth in battle. Will you stand with us against this threat?" Bruce nodded without hesitation. "Of course, but I'll need to know what we're up against." Niran growled low in his throat, then barked an order to the guards. "Take him to the command center, but watch him closely. If he makes one false move—" The implication hung in the air as Bruce was escorted from the chamber. They hurried through winding corridors, emerging into a vast room filled with holographic displays and bustling Una's technicians. A massive view screen dominated one wall, showing the approaching fleet, a swarm of angular, predatory ships that blotted out the stars. An Una's officer turned to Bruce, his expression grim. "The Krulgon Empire," he stated flatly. "They've long sought our world. It seems they've finally made their move." Bruce studied the tactical displays, his mind racing. The Una's defenses were formidable, but the Krulgon fleet vastly outnumbered them. As he watched, the first wave of orbital strikes hammered the city's shields. The entire structure shuddered under the assault. "If we need to even the odds," Bruce muttered, his eyes falling on the crystal he still clutched. An idea began to form, dangerous, untested, but potentially their only hope. He turned to the Una's commander. "I have a plan, but you're not going to like it." As Bruce outlined his strategy, using the crystal to supercharge the Una's defense grid, skepticism warred with desperation on the alien faces around him. It would require a level of trust between their species unprecedented in their history. Another barrage slammed into the city. Klaxons wailed as systems began to fail. Bruce looked at the Unas, seeing the fear in their eyes, but also a growing perseverance. "We don't have much time," he urged. "Are you with me?" For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Kylan stepped forward, placing his clawed hand on Bruce's shoulder. "I am with you, my friend," he hissed. "Let us show these Krulgon what happens when they threaten our world." One by one, the other Unas nodded their agreement. As they moved to implement Bruce's plan, a new alert chimed. A small fleet had just entered the system. Human ships, led by a vessel Bruce recognized instantly. "Admiral Jameson," he breathed, hope and confusion warring in his chest. What was his old mentor doing here, and how would his arrival affect the delicate alliance Bruce had just forged? With the sacred crystal pulsing in his grasp, Bruce steeled himself for the battle ahead. The fate of two worlds now rested in his hands. The Krulgon fleet descended upon the Una's homeworld, their ships blotting out the sky. Bruce and Kylan stood side by side as explosions rocked the ground, sending debris flying. Una's warriors scrambled to defensive positions, their scaled hands gripping energy weapons. Kylan barked orders in his native tongue, his forked tongue flicking with tension. Una's soldiers moved with practiced efficiency, taking up positions along the city's perimeter. In the command center, Niran's eyes narrowed as he watched Bruce work. The human's fingers flew across control panels, adjusting defenses and predicting Krulgon attack patterns with uncanny accuracy. "It's impossible," Niran muttered. "How is he doing this?" Bruce's voice crackled over the comm. "Their ships are forming a wedge formation. It's a feint. Concentrate fire on their port side." Una's gunners responded, their barrage catching the Krulgon ships off guard. Several enemy vessels erupted in flames, spiraling out of control. Despite their initial success, Bruce knew they were fighting a losing battle. He turned to Kylan, his eyes blazing with commitment. "We need to take the fight to them. I have a plan, but it's risky." Kylan nodded, trust evident in his reptilian features. "What do you need?" "A small team, your best warriors. We're going to hit their flagship." Within minutes, Bruce had assembled his strike force. They crouched inside a captured Krulgon shuttle, tension thick in the air. Bruce gripped the crystal tightly, its cool surface pulsing against his palm. "Remember," he said as they approached the massive Krulgon flagship, "we move fast, we hit hard, and we don't stop until we reach the control room." The moment they docked, chaos erupted. Krulgon soldiers poured into the hangar bay, energy bolts sizzling through the air. Bruce ducked and weaved, his movements fluid and precise. He fired his weapon with deadly accuracy, each shot finding its mark. Kylan watched in awe as Bruce dispatched foe after foe. This was no mere explorer. This was a warrior born. They fought their way through winding corridors, the ship's alarms blaring. Bruce led them unerringly towards the heart of the vessel, his tactical mind mapping their route. At last they reached the central control room. The doors hissed open, revealing a sight that made even Kylan's blood run cold. The Krulgon High Commander towered before them, his cybernetic enhancements gleaming wickedly. A sneer twisted his alien features. "So," he growled, "the insects have found their way to the center of the web." Bruce stepped forward, the crystal humming with energy in his grasp. "This ends now," he said, his voice steady. The commander lunged, his augmented limbs a blur of motion. Bruce met him head-on, ducking under a swipe that would have taken his head off. They traded blows in a deadly dance, neither able to gain the upper hand. Around them, Kylan and the Unas warriors battled waves of Krulgon guards. The air filled with the sounds of combat and the acrid smell of ozone from energy weapons. Bruce felt the crystal pulse, its power surging through him. He channeled its energy, his movements becoming faster, his strikes more powerful. The Krulgon commander's eyes widened in surprise as Bruce began to push him back. With a final, desperate lunge, Bruce drove the commander back against a control panel. The crystal flared with blinding light as Bruce slammed it into the ship's systems. Energy coursed through the flagship's circuits, overloading weapons and defensive systems. Throughout the Krulgon fleet, ships began to turn on each other, their own weapons firing wildly. The commander roared in fury, but it was too late. Bruce stood tall, the crystal's power flowing through him as the Krulgon invasion force tore itself apart. In the aftermath, as the last Krulgon ships fled the system, Bruce and Kylan emerged from the wreckage of the flagship. They watched as human vessels appeared, led by Admiral Jameson's ship. Neran approached, his earlier skepticism replaced by grudging respect. "Human," he said, "it seems we owe you a debt of gratitude." Bruce smiled wearily. "No debt," he replied, "just the beginning of a friendship between our peoples." As celebrations erupted around them, neither Bruce nor Kylan noticed the calculating gaze of Arya, leader of the Orion Initiative, fixed firmly on the crystal in Bruce's hand. Bruce's fingers flew across the holographic display, his brow furrowed in concentration as he analyzed the latest intelligence reports. The command center of the Unas flagship hummed with activity, screens flickering with data streams and star charts. "Another colony hit," he muttered, zooming in on a distant star system. "Cygnus 7, population 5,000, no survivors found." Kylan leaned over Bruce's shoulder, his scales gleaming in the dim light. "The Void Syndicate grows bolder. We must stop them before more innocent lives are lost." Bruce turned to see Admiral Jameson striding into the room, flanked by a squad of Earth Fleet operatives. The older man's weathered face was etched with concern. "Admiral," Bruce said, clasping his mentor's hand, "I didn't expect to see you here." As they spoke, the door hissed open again. Arya, leader of the Orion Initiative, entered with a purposeful stride. Bruce tensed, remembering her keen interest in the sacred crystal. "Mr. Robertson," Arya said, her voice smooth as silk, "I believe we have a common enemy." Bruce crossed his arms. "Do we? And what exactly is the Orion Initiative's stake in this?" Arya's lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Information, as always. We have reason to believe the Syndicate is merely a pawn in a larger game. Have you heard of the broker?" The name sent a ripple of unease through the room. Jameson stepped forward, his face grim. "An arms dealer with fingers in every dirty deal from here to the Outer Rim. If they're involved..." "Then we're dealing with something far more dangerous than simple raiders," Bruce finished. Hours later, their ship dropped out of hyperspace above a desolate world. Bruce stood on the bridge watching as they approached a sprawling settlement, or what was left of it. Buildings lay in ruins, streets littered with debris and abandoned vehicles. The Una's sensor operator shook his head. "None detected, sir." They landed amidst the devastation, the air thick with acrid smoke. Bruce led the team through the eerily silent streets, weapons at the ready. Kylan moved with fluid grace beside him, every scale filled with tension. A sudden movement caught Bruce's eye. He spun, raising his weapon, only to see a feral dog scavenging through the rubble. The animal yelped and darted away. "This is wrong," Kylan hissed. "Where are the bodies?" Before Bruce could respond, the air erupted with weapons fire. Energy bolts sizzled past his head as he dove for cover behind a burned-out transport. Kylan landed beside him, already returning fire. "Ambush!" Jameson shouted, his voice barely audible over the chaos. Bruce peeked around the edge of their cover, spotting sleek figures in matte black armor. The Void Syndicate had been waiting for them. "Kylan covering fire," Bruce yelled, then sprinted from his position. He rolled beneath a hail of energy bolts, coming up behind a half-collapsed wall. A Syndicate operative loomed before him, weapon raised. Bruce lashed out, his fist connecting with the attacker's helmet. The operative stumbled, and Bruce wrestled the weapon from their grasp. All around him the battle raged. Earthfleet operatives exchanged fire with Syndicate forces, while Kylan's energy blade crackled as he engaged in close combat. Bruce spotted a Syndicate soldier breaking away from the main group, fleeing toward a waiting shuttle. Without hesitation, he gave chase. The shuttle's engines roared to life as Bruce closed the distance. With a desperate lunge, he tackled the fleeing operative, both of them crashing to the ground in a tangle of limbs. Bruce pinned his opponent, ripping off their helmet to reveal a scarred, snarling face. "Talk," he demanded. "Who sent you? What does the broker want?" The operative spat blood. "You're too late. The singularity will be ours, and then you'll see what true power looks like." Bruce's blood ran cold. "Singularity? What are you talking about?" But before the operative could answer, a stun bolt struck them both. Bruce's world went dark, the sounds of battle fading as unconsciousness claimed him. Bruce's eyelids fluttered open, his vision blurry and unfocused. The harsh light of the medical bay stung his retinas. He tried to sit up, but found his body unresponsive, every muscle screaming in protest. "Easy there, old friend," a familiar voice said. Admiral Jameson's weathered face came into view. "You've been through hell and back." Bruce's throat felt like sandpaper. He croaked out, "The Ethos Codex?" Jameson's expression darkened. "Gone, the broker's forces took it when they retreated." Memories flooded back. The treacherous journey through the asteroid field, the battle on the desolate moon, the frantic chase across the stars. Bruce saw flashes of the ancient Una's outpost, its corridors bathed in an eerie, radioactive glow. He remembered the apex, a hulking figure of metal and flesh, bearing down on him with inhuman speed. "How long?" Bruce asked, his voice barely above a whisper. 3 days, Kylan answered, stepping into view. The Unus's scales were dull, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. "We feared you wouldn't wake." Bruce struggled to process the information. The broker. They said something about the quantum singularity. Arya's cool voice cut through the room. "Yes, and that's why we're here." She strode into Bruce's field of vision, her posture rigid. The Ethos Codex was never their true target. It was a means to an end. Bruce's mind raced, piecing together the implications. They wanted the knowledge to control the singularity. Jameson nodded grimly. And now they have it. We intercepted communications chatter. They're mobilizing forces across 3 sectors. Bruce tried to push himself up again, gritting his teeth against the pain. Keelan gently but firmly held him down. You need rest, the Unas insisted. Your body nearly tore itself apart, channeling the Codex's energy. Bruce relaxed back onto the bed, frustration evident on his face. We don't have time for rest. The broker's out there planning their next move. We need to... His words were cut off as alarms blared throughout the ship. Red emergency lights bathed the medical bay in an ominous glow. Jameson was already moving towards the door. Proximity alert. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. Bruce watched helplessly as his allies rushed to respond to the new threat. He clenched his fists, willing his battered body to cooperate. The destiny of the universe hung in the balance, and he was stuck in a hospital bed. Kylan lingered for a moment, his reptilian eyes filled with concern. We will face this threat, my friend. Rest now so that you may join us in the battles to come. As Kylan left, Bruce stared at the ceiling, his mind racing. The broker's warning echoed in his thoughts. This was only the beginning. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew they would test him and his allies to their very limits. Outside the medical bay viewport, space itself seemed to ripple and tear as enemy ships materialized. The battle for the future of the galaxy was about to begin in earnest. The remote outpost hummed with activity. As Bruce lay in the medical bay, his body racked with pain. The strain of channeling the Ethos Codex's power had taken its toll, leaving him weak and bedridden. Through the viewport, he watched as ships came and went, carrying wounded allies and vital supplies. Bruce struggled to sit up, wincing as he did so. What is it? Kylan's eyes narrowed as he pulled up a holographic display. The broker's forces have been raiding Una's colonies. Look at this pattern. Bruce studied the map, noting the systematic nature of the attacks. Each targeted colony possessed ancient relics or artifacts. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. They're not just after the Codex. It's part of something bigger. Precisely, Kylan nodded. And there's more. Jameson's intelligence network has uncovered evidence of the broker recruiting rogue Una's scientists and historians. They're offering vast resources for knowledge of our lost empire. Before Bruce could respond, the door slid open. Arya strode in, her presence commanding attention. Mr. Robertson, I see you're recovering. Good. We have much to discuss. Bruce eyed her warily. What do you want, Arya? She smiled, a calculated gesture that didn't reach her eyes. To offer you an opportunity. The Orion Initiative has located a legendary Una's vault. We believe it houses technology beyond our wildest dreams. And you want us to help you claim it, Bruce said flatly. Arya's smile widened. A joint operation. We secure the vault before the broker can lay their hands on it. Bruce exchanged a glance with Kylan. The Una's expression was guarded, but Bruce could see the spark of interest in his eyes. There's more, Arya continued. We believe the vault may hold the key to fully deciphering the Ethos Codex, to understanding the true power of the quantum singularity. Bruce's heart raced. The potential implications were staggering. He looked at Kylan again, seeing his own conflict mirrored in his friend's face. We'll need time to consider, Bruce began, but Arya cut him off. Time is a luxury we don't have. The broker's forces are already moving. We must act now or risk losing everything. Bruce closed his eyes, weighing the risks against the potential rewards. When he opened them, he saw Kylan nodding almost imperceptibly. All right, Bruce said, his voice firm. We're in, but we do this our way. As Arya left to make preparations, Bruce turned to Kylan. Assemble a team, our best people, plus a contingent of Una's warriors. We'll need their ancient knowledge. Kylan nodded, already moving towards the door. I'll speak with Niran. He'll want his most elite warriors for this mission. Bruce watched him go, then slowly, painfully began to rise from his bed. Whatever lay ahead, he knew he couldn't face it lying down. Bruce stood in the dimly lit war room, his hands gripping the edge of the holographic display table. The faces of his allies reflected the harsh blue glow of the tactical readouts, each bearing the weight of their recent discoveries. Admiral Jameson's gravelly voice broke the tense silence. "We need to draw them out. Use what we've learned as bait." Zarya's eyes flashed. "That's suicide. We should strike now while we have the advantage." Bruce watched as the two squared off, their voices rising. The constant hum of the ship's engines seemed to grow louder, matching the tension in the room. "Enough!" Bruce slammed his palm on the table, causing the holographic display to flicker. "We need to—" A commotion outside the war room cut him off. The door slid open, revealing a squad of security personnel dragging a struggling figure between them. Bruce's blood ran cold as he recognized the face of his former squadmate. "Ryan?" The room erupted into chaos. Bruce lunged forward, grabbing Ryan by the collar of his uniform. "What have you done?" Ryan didn't flinch. What needed to be done? The broker can bring order to this galaxy, end the endless cycle of war and suffering. Bruce's fist connected with Ryan's jaw, sending him sprawling. "You betrayed us, everything we fought for." As Bruce advanced, Ryan's hand darted to his belt. A high-pitched whine filled the air. "Explosive!" Jameson shouted. Bruce dove for cover as the first charge detonated. The war room's reinforced walls buckled under the force of the blast. Alarms blared as the ship's systems registered the damage. Through the smoke and debris, Bruce saw Ryan making a break for it. He scrambled to his feet, giving chase down the corridors of the ship. Emergency lighting bathed everything in an eerie red glow. "Bruce," Kylan's voice crackled over the comm. "I'm assembling a strike team. We'll cut him off at the hangar bay." Bruce's lungs burned as he ran. "No, it's too dangerous. We need to evacuate." Another explosion rocked the ship. Bruce stumbled, catching himself against a bulkhead. He could hear the groaning of metal as the vessel's structural integrity began to fail. Kylan's voice came again, filled with unshakable focus. "Someone has to stop him. Get the others to safety. I'll handle Ryan." Bruce's heart sank. He knew there was no talking Kylan out of it. "May the ancestors guide you, my friend." As Bruce changed course for the evacuation point, a new threat emerged. Arya and her Orion Initiative forces had turned on them, their weapons trained on Bruce's allies. "I warned you to trust them," Jameson shouted, ducking behind a fallen support beam. Bruce grabbed a fallen weapon, returning fire as he moved to join the Admiral. Energy bolts sizzled past his head, leaving scorch marks on the walls. Through the firefight, Bruce caught sight of Arya. She stood amidst the chaos, a cruel smile playing across her lips. Their eyes met, and in that moment Bruce understood the depth of her betrayal. With a primal yell, Bruce charged forward. Arya met his assault head-on, her own weapon clashing against his. They grappled in the confined space, each seeking to gain the upper hand. Arya's eyes glittered with malice. "Power, Bruce. The kind of power that shapes galaxies." A lucky strike sent Bruce reeling. He watched in horror as Arya tapped a command into her wrist computer. "Too late," she sneered. "The broker has everything they need now." Bruce's world narrowed to a pinpoint of rage. With a final burst of energy, he lunged forward, tackling Arya to the ground. Her head struck the deck with a sickening thud, and she went limp. As Bruce staggered to his feet, Jameson's voice cut through the din. "We have to go, now." They ran for the escape pods, the ship falling apart around them. As they strapped in, a transmission crackled over the comm. "Bruce," Kylan's voice was weak, filled with static. "Ryan stopped, but not enough time." There was a moment of silence. Then Kylan's voice came again, stronger this time. "It's been an honor, my friend, for the future of our people, for the galaxy." A blinding flash lit up the viewport as Kylan's final act sealed the vault forever. The escape pod jettisoned, carrying Bruce and the survivors away from the dying ship. As the pod hurtled through space, Bruce stared out at the stars. His body ached, his spirit wounded. But as he looked at the faces of those who had survived, he knew their fight was far from finished. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.